This morning on BRN, serious infections are linked to dementia risk. Joining me now are doctors Keenan Walker and Michael Duggan of the National Institute on Aging. Dr. Walker, Dr. Duggan, great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Hi, Jeff. Nice to be with you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, this is interesting research, and I'm so glad we could spend a few minutes talking about it. Keenan, I want to start with you because there appears to be, and I want to get confirmation from both you and Michael, that an infection, a serious infection, can link to greater dementia risk, and it ties directly back to a study that you and Michael and the team did.
Yeah, so this is something that has been in the scientific literature for some time, and anecdotally, people have understood that, after an infection, particularly a serious infection, they cognitively don't feel as sharp, and oftentimes that goes away. But there's some evidence, and there has been even before our study, quite a bit actually, that shows that those with a history of severe infection, and even if it's many, many years ago, are at increased risk for longer-term cognitive impairment and perhaps even dementia. And that's something we find.
Yeah, and Michael, just to kind of build on that, when we're talking about infection, can you give an example of what a serious infection? I mean, I think I have an idea, but what would be deemed a serious infection?
The most strong evidence out there linking some sort of an infection exposure and risk of neurocognitive decline, including dementia, as well as other neurodegenerative diseases. It seems to be hospitalized severe infections. So, for example, pneumonia or sepsis. That's usually where we see the strongest associations with the subsequent potential for impairment.
So when you look at these results, Michael, and I'll go to you first and then Keenan, if I'm somebody who had pneumonia recently or who has had pneumonia, and let's just say I wasn't hospitalized, but I had it bad enough that I couldn't go to work, I had to stay home, my wife had to take care of me, are there next steps in terms of things that I need to do in terms of preventing cognitive decline, or is there prevention that we can focus on?
I think post infection, that's still very much up for debate. I think there's a lot of modifiable risk factors in your lifestyle, as well as in your community, that we're beginning to understand more about how they can be protective or afford resiliency for neurocognitive outcomes among older adults. So post-infection, I think that's still up for debate. Pre-infection, however, I think it's important to note that we now see through a lot of large electronic health records that individuals who do have certain vaccination histories, for example, varicella zoster infections, also some other evidence coming from TB vaccinations, individuals who have those histories seemingly have a lower risk for longitudinal decline in certain neurocognitive outcomes. So I think that's an important point, that there actually is some evidence for protection among individuals who do have some of these vaccination histories.
Yeah, so Keenan, it sounds like that if I do get an infection, the chances are in your life you're going to have some level of an infection. I mean, I can't, unless you're John Travolta in the movie The Boy in the Bubble, chances are you're going to be exposed to an infection. So it sounds like preventatively, tongue-in-cheek saying that, but preventatively you can prevent greater cognitive decline through vaccination.
Absolutely. That, Michael hit the nail on the head. You can think of it as, like, obviously no one except for the bubble boy is going to go through life without any infections, right? But you can think of there being this stepwise relationship or graded relationship between the severity of the infection and the likelihood that you may receive some adverse brain health outcomes as a result of it. So, being hospitalized with pneumonia, is going to be a lot worse for your brain than having pneumonia and sort of getting over it in a week or so and being, prescribed antibiotics out on an outpatient basis. So, avoiding the really severe infections, like through vaccination, is going to be extremely helpful. And then once you are infected, I would imagine, and I don't know of any evidence, but just extending the reasoning, doing things to reduce the severity of the course of your infection, are probably going to help to you know alleviate or ensure that you don't have any significant cognitive impairment after the fact. Um, and we do want to highlight that there is a recovery and in many folks after infection in terms of cognition. But we also think that there can be in some cases a long-term um, effect on brain health that may, in addition to many other things that can influence brain health, you know, increase your risk, at least to some degree, for dementia.
And Michael, to follow up on that, does this study and the findings, does it actually help with potential treatment of dementia? So, if you create a link and you figure out that there is a link between serious infection, again, I'm not a scientist, I'm a financial guy, right? But is there a way to take these findings and actually dovetail them, maybe with future research, into prevention or treatment once you get cognitive decline?
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeff. I think that's one of the things that makes our study, at least this recent one, more unique, and the fact that we identify what we might think be some mechanisms by which these infection exposures actually lead to those poor neurocognitive outcomes. As we were saying, this evidence has been out there before, showing a link between infections, potentially more serious infections with elevated risk of neurocognitive decline. But with regards to how it actually happens, that's really where our paper seemingly makes great strides, I'd say. And knowing that these certain mediators, in our case, proteomics, which are readily quantifiable in plasma, many of them also detected in brain tissue, knowing that they mediate the relationship between these infections and brain health, I think opens the door for potential therapeutic alternatives. And that's something we highlight in the paper. There's a certain set of proteins that we discover are targets of actually existing therapeutics, suggesting that repurposing of those drugs could afford some resiliency among individuals who are exposed to infections. However, I just want to highlight that we didn't actually test any compounds or do any experimental paradigms in our particular study, although we had definitely identified what we might think be some causal mediators of this relationship.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. And Keenan, excuse me, just to kind of tie things out as we close out our conversation this morning, what's the next step in terms of your research, yours and Michael's research? How do you build upon that? So is it testing compounds? Is it further finding that maybe there are certain infections that have create greater cognitive decline? How do you follow up on this research?
We're interested in really sussing out the thing that occurs between infection and dementia risk that really links the two. And as Michael mentioned, that's what we were after in this initial paper. But now that we have some candidate proteins that we think, either are downregulated post-infection that may leave the brain more vulnerable, or are upregulated post-infection that may be pathogenic and harmful to the brain. Now that we have this set of proteins, we can go after them, as a group or one by one to try to understand, okay, how real is this relationship? And is it something that if we reverse, we can alleviate some of the adverse effects of an infection? So I would say we're validating what we have on a molecular basis, and then saying if maybe there are opportunities for intervention. And even if they're not, I think as we go along, this path of investigation, we're learning more and more about the biology of dementia that can in probably many cases be independent of infection. So we're underscoring this idea that like the immune system, aberrations in the immune system, is something that can place one at risk for dementia, and that may offer therapeutic opportunities as well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, I mean, it's don't take this the wrong way, but it's almost like little baby steps to get to, I want to call it a cure or reversal or prevention or whatever. And it takes a lot of research to do that. Michael, Keenan, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for talking about your research, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Jeff.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, for all the news in one place. Details, of course, are at our website. And we're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.